And, especially since a building that's getting started under construction today is going to take 3 years to develop. By the time you get to 2023, the COVID crisis will be a long distant memory. And I think that the market will be back in good shape. Now here's Jacksonville. This is one of the strongest markets in the entire country. And it's absolutely one of the strongest in Florida. You see that there was only a momentary dip in effective rents and stated rents. And look at those occupancy rates. They're actually higher than before the crisis. Jacksonville is a very diversified economy. It's not so dependent on tourism and hospitality. It's also got defense as kind of a stabilizer. A lot of defense contracts come through there. This is one of the few MSAs in the country, actually, where occupancy is trending up. Tampa is another one of those, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Then we get to Orlando. Now, what you see here is the rents still going down, both on a stated rent basis and an effective rent basis. Occupancies still struggling. And it's very different from what we saw in West Palm Beach and in these other markets. Orlando's hospitality-heavy economy is under a lot of strain. And it's not only the tourism and the theme park layoffs, it's also business travel. And looking forward, the large conventions may not be as numerous going forward, which reduces business for those hotels and the convention center. There are 11% fewer jobs now in the Orlando economy than there were in February. The only other U.S. metros with losses of that magnitude are Las Vegas and New York. Orlando also faces the challenge of construction that's pretty robust compared to the rest of the state. There are There are 14,200 units on the way in the Orlando MSA, and that'll grow the stock by 5.9%. That's a lot. The other stat worth noting in Orlando is that resident retention when leases end is falling. The latest retention figure from RealPage is 46%, off from 52% a year earlier. We can also drill down into the Orlando market and look at where the pain is being felt the most. The areas closest to the theme parks are getting clobbered, while the suburban markets on the north side and over in Lake Nona and places like that are in relatively good shape. And we heard the contrarian on the panel this morning, Tim Peterson, saying he sees Orlando as a counter-cyclical play. He says that, look, people are going to probably, after the crisis is over, they're going to opt for domestic travel vacations more than international ones. So I think that's an interesting play. Now, if we compare, going back to the West Palm Beach graph, Palm Beach County, there's a nice U-shaped recovery there, as opposed to Orlando, where market rents have kind of just gone in an L shape and still trending downward for effective rents. Now here's Tampa. This is a very strong market relative to some of these others that have been hit so hard on the tourism and hospitality side. There was certainly a hit in the spring and ended around the summertime. And now we see rents, including effective rents, going back up, and they're above where they were before the crisis. And look at the occupancy rates, well above where they were before the crisis ever began. And then you have to look at by submarket. Downtown, submarket, South Tampa, New Tampa, Wesley Chapel are seeing very strong rebounding occupancies and rents. Now here's Miami. In this particular case, I combined new lease-up properties with the already existing properties. So when you look at that, you see kind of a slow climb, not a drastic reduction, but kind of just a slow climb and a bit of a rebound after the distress. It kind of started to wind down. Miami, within the 3 South Florida metros, Miami is struggling the most. And that has a lot to do also with the shadow market, that is the condos that are offered for lease. I spoke last week with Greg Willett, the chief economist at RealPage, And he said his numbers show that occupancy is down 110 basis points year over year to 95.2%, and rents are down 3.2% from year ago rates. And there are 12,900 units under construction, according to RealPage, in the Miami market, and that amounts to an increase in the inventory of 4.2%. And again, the ALN numbers are a little different from what I just stated because those include the new lease ups. And by the way, I also talked with somebody at Rental Beast. They said their inquiries are down 30% year on year in Miami, and concessions are up 115%. Let's talk about product a little bit. Okay, so I think that there will be some changes in the way developers think about their amenity space and about even what they put in the units and in the buildings and lobbies and so on. I recently heard a developer lament, amenities used to be about getting people together. Now it's all about keeping people apart. I couldn't disagree more. It's like what my daughter's principal said, we should never do social distancing. We may sometimes have to physically distance, but we have to keep people socially connected. And I think that we can think about ways to do that with the amenity spaces. Bring the yoga class out onto the pool deck or out onto the amenity deck on the podium or on the rooftop or whatever it might be. And another thing I want to say is that I think that new developments, new rental buildings have an opportunity to actually gain some comparative advantage over the older buildings. And by older, I mean pre-COVID. So I think you're going to see more emphasis on things like upgraded air filtration, antimicrobial surfaces. And these become selling points for the new buildings. Larger and more numerous balconies. I think people want to get that outside air. They consider that to be healthier. It feels better. And, a separate entry for deliveries is also being talked about in a lot of places. In some of the luxury building, touchless systems, touchless elevators, touchless doors. Of course, that doesn't work in the economic model for every project. It doesn't work for your, surface park walk-up building. But for the more luxury buildings, the taller buildings, it sometimes can work. Some developers are talking about retractable glass walls or fixed partitions in common areas. Again, I mentioned the rooftop terraces for the high rises, separate rooms in the fitness center or partitions, in-unit laundries. So some of these things are kind of easy. Some of them will take more work. And I think that you have to use your own judgment and use your own economic model to see which things work. And, to a degree, it's playing on psychology. Whether or not these things really make people healthier may not be the point. People may not be using their frontal cortex to make these decisions. It may be more the limbic system and their lizard brain saying, make my family healthier, protect my family and my own health. So think about that in your marketing. Back to the Harvard analysis. This is an interesting exhibit. The Harvard study shows that over a long timeline, rents have risen the fastest in large buildings. Over the past 15 years, rents have risen by 30% in buildings of 20 units or more, but much more like half that in smaller apartment buildings. And then they also showed data on single family homes. And I know some of you have been talking about single family for rent on one level or another. Single family homes for rent have been experiencing strong increases in rents for the past 15 years, and they've shot up even faster since the pandemic hit, driven by people wanting to have their own entrance, private outdoor space, a garage, a spare room for a home office. The increased availability of built-for-rent single-family homes in some markets has created another source of competition for apartment buildings, although single-family home communities rarely match up to the suite of recreational amenities that an upscale apartment complex typically offers.